Hi, Mon. Hello, Mon. Hi,
Yes, sir.
Mon.
Hello po.
I ended the other meeting kasi si JB yata yun eh.
Ay, okay sir, sige po.
I ended and so i-transfer ko ang hosting kanino sa'yo for now.
Sige po sir.
Okay, tapos transfer mo na lang sa kanya ha.
Apo sir.
So I'll make you a host and then I'll leave.
Whatever the appropriate greeting is for your time zone.
That's right.
Good day.
Good day.
Good day. Good day.
Good day. Good
day, everyone.
Yeah, good day.
Double down on our efforts to catch up with science and technology and innovation. Science and technology and innovation, these are indispensable in the modern economy, in the modern world.
The problem being that, while we have our PhDs here, there aren't enough of us. And everywhere else in the world, for research to be successful, you need a complete research group.
It's very important that the PASA members and scientists based in the Philippines are continuously in contact, so we will know the needs of the Filipinos and opportunities that the Filipinos can have to do science with their PASA counterparts.
I think that is one of the good programs that they keep on supporting some of the initiatives of our researchers and scientists here in the country.
The role of this cooperation among these government agencies really is to be able to attract science and technology global-based companies to set up shop here. And that is really key in terms of developing the science and technology innovation ecosystem in the country.
We really need to ratchet up the appreciation, the recognition of the importance of science and technology and innovation.
And we are all trying to attain what we call the common good, the greater, higher, long-term good of the Filipino people.
All right. Good day, everyone. So, good morning for those of you in the US, and good evening for those of you who are joining us here in the Philippines. So, I'm Kathleen Aviso. I was the former president of PAASE way back in 2009. I am also a professor at the Department of Chemical Engineering and currently the Dean of the Gokongwei College of Engineering at De La Salle University. And I will be your moderator for today's forum. Today is the third day of our week of pro-science activism, finding common ground for building a robust post-COVID STI ecosystem. Yesterday, we had a very fruitful discussion with presidents and heads of various institutions, including the University of the East, the UP System, Batangas State University, and Carnegie Mellon University in Australia. The discussion was a continuation on the issues related to science and technology, human capital development, and establishing R1 universities, which was discussed earlier in day one. I'd like to thank Dr. Julius Liaño, our rapporteur for yesterday, for providing us with the highlights of yesterday's session. Our discussants yesterday emphasized the persisting challenges faced by universities in the Philippines, which are still on lacking resources both in human capital and infrastructure, as well as inefficient processes to support research and development. Our speakers also shared with us some best practices which they have implemented in their institutions to create a better environment for the growth of research and innovation. Some of the key factors they've identified include the need to strengthen collaboration, mentorship, and integration between academics both locally and internationally. We should also allow universities to specialize within specific domains, an example of which is the DOST NICER program, which has been implemented recently by the government. We also need to support and reinforce cooperation between the academe, industry, and government, since they are all members of the STI ecosystem. Finally, we should allow chief scientists and innovators to spearhead science leadership as independent advisors free from any political agenda. As a step forward, our discussants highlight the relevance of RA 11293, or the Philippine Innovation Act, as an opportunity for removing barriers in innovation if only we can concretize its objectives and provisions. Through the experiences shared by our speakers, they have also demonstrated that successes can be achieved if proper strategies and policies are put in place. Their experience can be used as starting points and models towards building and strengthening the country's science and technology research and development ecosystem. So if you're interested to view the full recording of the sessions for the past 2 days, these are available in the PAASE's Facebook page, The Filipino Scientist. For today, we have with us members from PAASE to share their thoughts and experiences for building a robust STI ecosystem. Our discussants will be given 7 minutes each to share with us their main inputs in this topic, and then we will have an open forum after all the discussants have provided their inputs. May I remind the speakers to strictly follow the time limit given to them. More can be shared during our open forum. Should you have any comments and questions for our discussants, kindly type them up in the chat box, and we will get to them during our open forum. Thank you everyone again for joining us today. All right, so maybe we can start off with our first discussant of the evening. Our first discussant is from Bataan Peninsula State University. Unfortunately, President Gregorio Rodes is unable to join us tonight due to certain internet issues. So on behalf of President Rodes, Dr. Hermogenes M. Pagyar, the Vice President for Research, Extension, and Training Services, will speak on his behalf. Dr. Hermogenes. I believe he's
I'm coming loud and clear.
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear.
Yeah, thank you very much. So, in behalf of our university president, Dr. Gregorio D. Ruiz, allow me to share with you what Bataan Peninsula State University has been doing and currently being doing as far as research and development and innovation is concerned. Let me share my slide. Yeah, in behalf of the PAASE president and its officers, we would like to extend our gratitude and for this opportunity to be part of this a week-long discussion regarding the pro-science activism, finding common ground for building a robust post-COVID STI ecosystem in the Philippines. So let me start on this one, the role of SUCS toward promoting innovation and internationalization activities as a driver of sustainable and inclusive growth. So I would like to share with you the vision and mission of our humble university, the Bataan Peninsula State University. So it envisions to become a relevant and responsive multidisciplinary research and development programs towards generation and dissemination of appropriate knowledge and technologies that will uphold sustainable development in the country by 2020, to undertake and strengthen multidisciplinary researches that will catalyze socioeconomic development of the province and the region and of the country through wide dissemination and utilization of outcomes-based research programs, innovative R&D outputs, and established R&D centers. For our objectives in the Research and Development Unit, we are multidisciplinary researches. We do researches of interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary or across discipline. We facilitate research collaborations as one of the usual activities of SUCS and even SCIs in the Philippines, not only in the national collaboration, but even collaborations abroad. So we are also establishing effective social mechanisms within the university through our Research and Development Office is truly engaged on collaborations and consultations and talks with local industry players as possible partners and takers of our research outputs and innovations. Of nations, that is one of the trust among SUCs in the Philippines. So we are not contented anymore purely on publications, but now we are directed towards genuine translation and utilization of our research outputs through commercialization. And we provide support to individual researchers like capacity development. And we facilitate the process transferring research. For our strategies, we do some sort of benchmarking on the best practices of other institutions here and abroad. We conduct the annual or regular in-house reviews of our completed and ongoing researches. And most of the researches, or all our researches are undergoing with a series of technical review and ethics review. So we disseminate information on research activities. We design multidisciplinary framework. We facilitate local international partnerships. So we consider as well the gender aspects of our research program, the gender and development. And also we have allocation for capacity development of our faculty members on research and development. I would like to inform you that as of today, we have established and functional R&D centers in the university. We have one of our active center, R&D center is a dream center being managed by Dr. John Ryan Dison. This is a development research for extension on additive manufacturing. We have gone through a lot with this 3D printing technology, not only in the the province, but in the region as well, being BPSU as the lead agency institution on 3D printing or additive manufacturing technology. And in fact, we have already submitted our proposal under NICER program for this center, and has been reviewed already by the funding agency, the DOSTP shared. Another initiative of our university is the creation or establishment of Organic Agriculture Research and Development Innovation Center in one of our campuses in university, which is the Agriculture Campus. So we are now into that kind of a technology transfer, pilot testing, and demonstration of farming systems in the upland area. This is a diversified organic farming system on crops and livestock production, product development. Another promising activities of the university is this, the CRAABS, or Center for Research on Aquaculture and Aquatic Resources in brackish water system, wherein BPSU has been identified as a lead agency for brackish water system and aquatic water resources. Basically focus on mangrove crabs and prawn. And we have also another center, which is commodity based, which is cashew. We are now in development stage of this R&D development and extension on cashew. We had the initial partnership with the Provincial Agriculture Office for the development of a cashew industry in the province, particularly in the municipality of the Pagyar. So we have research units in the university under the Research and Development Office, apart from the Publication Office, the Peninsulares Research Ethics Committee, and we have also the Innovation and Technology Support Office, or ETSO, for the Patent Office. And we have recently established technology-based incubator, which is TBI, and actually we had the first grant for this center or unit coming from DOSTP card under Agri-Aqua TDI. And just recently, 2 days ago, we have successfully presented our proposal under HERIT program. This is a TBI focused on engineering and ICT technology. So we'll be having 2 projects now coming from that 2 agencies. Okay. And the Technology Transfer and Knowledge Management Office.
Okay, thank you so much,
and this
Dr.
is our
Pagyar.
milestone.
Yes, kindly, wrap it up.
Sorry. No worries. Yeah. So we have the Bataan Advanced Science Technology Ecosystem for Sustainable Development, and the challenges in the cultivation of SNT culture and promotion of R&D in the university.
Hello? Dr. Pagyar, are you still there?
Shall be allocated. Provide at least 3 plantilla positions to SUC scientists with SG24. Provide funding for 3 postdoctoral fellows for all SUCs and top 10 universities. Provide funding for 10 postdoctoral fellows, and for identification of product services to market globally. And establishment of SNT parks in every region should be established in each of the 17 regions. So this is one of our recommendations in respect to the implementation of Philippine Innovation Act. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Pagyar. It's nice to see the developments in Bataan Peninsula State University, and I'm sure you can share more later in our discussion. So now it's time to call on our next discussant. Our next discussant is Professor academician Raymond Tan, who is the current Vice Chancellor for Research and Innovation at De La Salle University. He is the most productive researcher in the country with more than 470 publications to date and an H index of 51. Professor Tan?
Yes, thanks very much. Good day to everyone. Let me just bring up my slides. And I'll make this really short and sweet. I will also, let me see. This might take a few seconds. I'll make this short and sweet. I try to take a national outlook as I go through a quick presentation. This diagram more or less explains
we still
itself.
cannot see the diagram. At the
really?
moment, it's still in the.
All right. In that case, this might take a bit longer. Maybe. Let me.
Okay.
So please let me know what you can see.
Yeah, we can see it, Raymond, but if you can just maximize it or go to slide presentation.
All right, I'm having.
Yeah, the slide presentation isn't.
Sorry about this. Now it's taking longer than I planned. So I should share my desktop, not my screen.
Maybe, yeah.
Okay, so if I share my screen, then whatever I see is what everybody else sees. All right, so
All
now,
right, there we.
As I said, this diagram more or less explains itself. I will say that having been in academia in the Philippines for 25 years, we have gone a long way over the past generation towards establishing this. We were really starting from near zero back in the late 1990s. So plenty of progress has been made. There is still plenty of work to be done. And on the left side of the diagram, the research which should be done mostly in universities, there is some cause for concern that I want to bring up. This is the Philippines' performance in the most recent Global Innovation Index. There is plenty of good news again. As a country, we've been upwardly mobile in the rankings over the course of many years. We're squarely in the second quartile of the rankings, number 51. But there are important metrics in which we do very badly. We are underperforming in R&D expenditure, in PCT patents, and in scientific articles. For the latter, we're actually in the bottom 10% in the world. And if we look at universities in particular, just zooming in on the National Capital Region because of space constraints, and comparing ourselves with the best of our region, for example, Malaysia and Thailand, I will point out very quickly that the outputs of our best HEIs in the National Capital Region are dwarfed by those of universities like University of Malaya in Kuala Lumpur and Chulalongkorn in Thailand. And the picture is even worse if you look at the national level. If you pile up all of the combined outputs of colleges and universities and institutes in the Philippines, the combined total is only comparable to a single large institution in other developing countries in our region. So as I said, there's much work to be done. Obviously, the shortcomings lie in our tertiary education system, and we really have to be frank about that before we can even begin to imagine what the solutions might be. So I modestly offer up some potential steps that we can take. Just 4 points for discussion. Number one is we may need a research-oriented ranking system for local universities and colleges, but which are aligned closely with what are used for international metrics, international ratings like Times Higher Education or QS, so that the local rankings can be used as a sort of a stepping stone towards international recognition. The second point is we may need an elite group of local institutions, maybe say the top 10 or so, similar to the UK Russell Group. And the intent there is not just for vanity purposes, but the elite tends to have a bad connotation here in the Philippines, but the intent is that should spearhead developments in the rest of the tertiary education sector through benchmarking, both internationally and locally. And of course, I don't mean that there should be a fixed composition. I think that in any given year, the membership in this elite group should be based on specific metrics and deliverables. The third point, which I think is necessary, would be the establishment of university-managed, government-funded national research institutes. Following the US model of national laboratories, which emerged during World War II and continue to this day. The good news is the DOST's nicer program might be the prototype for this in the future, but I think that needs to be explored. And finally, just because obviously it boils down to the frontliners, to the actual people doing the research. What is it that's missing? One of the ways by which we can begin to create better working environments for researchers is to have the imprimatur of CHED, probably by some kind of a memorandum order that mandates for institutions of a particular research status. Say, if you want to be part of a research university group, then a specific percentage of your faculty must have research-intensive working hours based on internal policies. And that can begin to provide the policy scaffolding for universities and colleges to actually become research intensive, not just by name, but by actual allocation of resources. So that's all I want to present for now. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tan, for keeping that short and sweet. But you've really raised a lot of points for discussion later on. So let me call on our next discussant. Our next discussant is Dr. Barrio Santo Domingo, our current president of PAASE, research scientist of the University of Maryland, Baltimore County. Yes.
Thank you, Kay. Let me just show my slides. Yes, good day, everyone. My discussion is about Joel Coelho's cockpit in his model. You know, Joel presented a model on Monday, and it shows that the cockpit represents S&T talents, which is what the paper of CP and Giselle Concepcion was about. But I'd like to tell a really short story about a group of citizens who banded together in the town of Morong, Rizal, to get together to accomplish an somehow improbable project. This project was, in a sense, inspired by what you see on screen, Dr. Francisco Feliciano, who, upon completing his master's in Berlin and a doctorate in Yale, came home to Morong to start a program, only to be severely frustrated because there was no network, there was no space, there was no community, ready for him to accept his ideas and build what probably Lucio San Pedro built in Angono. It's the same province, in Rizal. Of course, he went back to UP, and because of UP's support and the vibrant community in the arts and music, he eventually became a national artist. And if you want to listen to his music, you can just Google him and enjoy his compositions on YouTube. So fast forward 30 or 40 plus years, knowing that sad episode, and thinking of what could have been if there was space and support for Dr. Feliciano. A small group formed a society called the Lipunang Pangkasaysayan ng Morong, literally occupied an old municipal building, cleaned it, and transformed it into a museum and a space for arts and music. The transformation of the physical setting and the formation of a group of local history enthusiasts and artists attracted young and professional and aspiring artists alike. Art classes were organized, exhibits were hanged, local artists were invited to Manila, and Likas Moran became a founding member of the National Local Historical Committees Network of the Philippines, and the rest is history. So you can see here how it looks like now. It started as a decrepit space, but because of sheer enthusiasm, it became a flourishing space for arts and music. and the artists are now everywhere, even I think in the Galeria Joaquin in UP Town Center. But why am I telling this story? I realized early on that very similar principles apply to organizing talent development in STI. And what are those principles? First, that you meet people where they are at the beginning. Okay, know what they know, what their skills are, what their experiences are. Two, set high expectations. And three, design or tailor programs or services that are based on their needs whether educational, social, economics, and so on and so forth. So plans for human capital development may not be enough. We need to leverage social capital to create human capital. And this is widely documented, that we can intentionally harness social capital to build human capital in STEM. For this discussion, I chose two major problems: the lack of SNT graduates and in especially masters and PhDs, for which we don't have really enough data to really understand this phenomenon, and the low levels of science identity and science self-efficacy among students, which was articulated by a number of PAS members when we met a while back. But first, I tried to look at the existing programs. It seems that we really have a lot of programs, and very recently, in August 2017, President Duterte signed the Republic Act 10931, or the Universal Access to Quality Tertiary Education Act in Education Act. So under this particular RA, there are several, smaller RAs that cater to particular segments of S&T studentry and even sectors, outside of STI. Now, just a consideration, because I work with I've been working with talented students for a while now. I would like to propose the organization of cohort-based STEM scholars undergraduate programs that aim to produce STEM PhD or MD PhD matriculants. And these are undergraduate programs that start recruiting potential PhD materials from even junior high school. And an example of this would be the University of Maryland, Baltimore County's Meyerhoff Scholars Program. You can see on the right side here, Dr. Kismekias Corbett. Dr. Corbett was a Meyerhoff Scholar. She was the lead scientist for Moderna, and she's now at Harvard, H.T. Chan School of Public Health as an assistant professor. What is the Meyerhoff Model? The Meyerhoff Model is a wrap-around comprehensive model for training future PhDs. So it starts with recruitment in high school, brings them to campus for a selection weekend, interview them, and those who were deemed to be the best candidates are offered, financial support, and they undergo the summer bridge program, and all of these components are, applied so that eventually they matriculate to STEM PhD or MD PhD programs. What are the outcomes? This is fully documented. We have a lot of publications, including Science, Journal of Women and Minorities in Science, etc. We found that Meyerhoffs were 4.8 times more likely to complete a STEM PhD than comparison group. By comparison group, we mean those who declined the offer but went to Yale or to Brown or UCLA instead. So this has been also documented a number of times. We also looked into the students' science identity and research self-efficacy and found that they have significantly, increased the levels of these particular attributes after experiencing the program. Now, having this program also has impact on the institution. For a very long time, UMBC was at the bottom, of the ranking of the source of undergraduate who goes into a STEM PhD or MD PhD. Now, in terms of PhD and natural sciences and engineering, the institution is now #2 source undergraduate or graduates who goes into the program, and number one a source of MD PhD. Because of this success of the program, it has garnered attention from many funding agencies, including the Howard Hughes Medical Institute, the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative, and very recently, we completed the Meyerhoff Adaptation Program, where we trained the personnel at the Penn State University and University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill to create their own cohorts of science scholars, apply the same model that we applied at the Meyerhoff for over 30 years now. And we found similar successes, in the first 6 or 7 cohorts. Now we are looking into the initiative of Chan Zuckerberg at the University of California in Berkeley and the University of California in San Diego. Very similar initiative that we are applying there. And while I don't have it here, we also have a similar adaptation, because we don't call it replication, but adaptation at the Howard University in Washington, DC. Now, these are my recommendations. If anyone would be interested in this program, we recommend that at least the institution commit to the foundational elements of the model, which are first the summer bridge before the freshman year and the program community. We are actually right now in talks with Eastern Visayas State University and the University of Rizal system because of their interest in the program, and we hope to be able to start an adapted program in their institutions very soon. Of course, it is important to adapt the program to the culture and institution. We know that we cannot just lift and pile a particular theory or model to any society. We need to be able to tailor it so that it fits the culture. We need to use the language, we need to look into the structure and be able to craft a model that will be serving the students, but not only to just apply the model in total. Of course, sufficient and sustained administrative support. This is very, very important. The buy-in of the administration is very important so that the philosophy and the values of the institution can form part of the program, and the program's values will form part of the institution. Recruitment of full-time program staff. This is very important. We found in our adaptation at Penn State and UNC that we really need a full-time program to attend, 100% to the students. We have one advisor for first and second years. We have a second advisor for the third and fourth year. So we need to be really very intentional. Immersive upfront interinstitutional training and sustained guidance. We are doing this. UMBC is doing this with Penn State and UNC. We are also doing this with UC Berkeley and with UC San Diego. There was an initial shadowing, of our personnel from those adapting institutions, and then we continue to mentor and guide them so that they fully buy into the program and practice, the practices of the Meyerhoff staff, of course, considering their own local context. And then the breadth of faculty participation, very, very important. The buy-in of the faculty who are willing to mentor students. Unless you have a faculty with their own labs, with their own programs, with their own projects, it will be difficult to start a program like this. And of course, very, very important, data infrastructure and program evaluation. It goes without saying that data is very important for us to be able, to monitor, how the program is doing, or even before starting a program, what is there, what do we need to change, what are our numbers, what are our targets? So with this, I would like to conclude my discussion. Thank you very much. I hope I didn't use more than 7 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mario. But yeah, that's a very interesting model. Yeah, if the group doesn't mind, we'll take in one more discussant, and then maybe we can take some Q&A in the middle, maybe for about 5 to 10 minutes, just so we don't forget what has been discussed by our earlier discussants. So can I have our next discussant, Dr. Silverio Cabellon, the Chair of Research Committee, University of the Philippines Medical Alumni Society in America. Dr. Cabellon?
Ma'am, I submitted my slides, and I wonder if that's going to be presented, or I could share my screen. So what is the pleasure of the chair?
Richmond, do we have the slides of Dr. Cabellon with you?
Checking, ma'am.
Okay, so while we're waiting, perhaps you have some questions. You can type it in the chat so that we can get to them right away after the presentation of Dr. Cabellon. Did you find it, Richmond? Do you have it with you?
I have it, Kay.
All
I
right.
can share my slides if here they are.
All right.
Can you
there we
see
go.
it?
Yes.
Can you see it?
100%. Yes, we can see it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, for the privilege of presenting to the distinguished Philippine Academy for the Advancement of Science and Technology. I share this slide because I refuse to be poor. There's no need to be poor. Yesterday, there was an email from Dr. Coelho regarding improving socio-economic development in the home country. I refuse to be poor. Let me see. It doesn't seem to advance. Can you see it?
Perhaps there's an arrow if you can hover on the lower left side of the screen.
Oh, here it is.
There we go.
Here it is. Okay. I am presenting actionable items on Philippine medicine. They are the Philippine Virology Institute, the PGH in Diliman, and expanding the edge of Philippine medicine. Here is the Philippine Virology Institute. The Philippines does not have the capability to manufacture vaccines to prevent disease. We were caught with our unprepared during the beginning of the pandemic. The Philippines is not involved in the discovery of vaccines and the prevention of viral disease. The Philippines is not involved in the development or in the treatment of viral disease. So therefore, we need the Virology Institute to address human viruses such as COVID-19 and animal viruses such as African swine fever and bird flu, and plants, the coconut kadang-kadang viroid or the tomato yellow virus. So what needs to be done? The bill is in the Senate and needs to be signed in law. Here is the architectural drawing of the Philippine Virology Institute. This morning, I received an email from Undersecretary Rowena Guevara. Very apropos, timely, because Undersecretary Guevara was mentioned that DOST has 283 million to do R&D, and the Department of Public Works has 50 million to start this institution going. So we are on our way, even without the Senate signing the bill. So that's the first actionable item that I am presenting. The next actionable item is the PGH in Diliman. Yesterday, former President Alfredo Pascual mentioned that it takes 12 years for an institution to get going. Let me tell you that this idea is more than 50 years. When I was a medical student, there was a proposal to erect a medical center in UP Diliman. So it has taken half a century to get this institution going. But we are also on our way. The present president of the University of the Philippines has designated this as the flagship project of his administration, President Danilo Concepcion. So we have the Philippine General Hospital. Dr. Herbosa, head of public and private partnership when he was Undersecretary of Health, is the mechanism for this institution to flower. So what is this? It's going to be located, here is UP. They were talking about the National Science Complex. It's somewhere.
Oh, did he freeze?
Yeah, I think we lost Dr. Cabello, but I can still see him in the panel, in the list of participants.
It has gone all the way to the office of NEDA. In fact, UP President Danilo Concepcion, when he was talking about this, had a call from Secretary Peña. It was the secretary that called, apparently, according to the story of President Concepcion, says, Danny, what do you need? And it was the leadership of Secretary Peña that probably got this going. But here we are way ahead. We have even a legal advisor and to do this. And here is the public-private partnership that is going. It will cost 21 billion, but here is what is the goal. We are going to have to compete in the world, and we need to remedy genetic disease, metabolic disease like diabetes. We're not going to be giving insulin to everybody. We're going to produce insulin-producing cells that can be given to a patient, and that those cells are going to be implanted into the liver and control the diabetes. No more injections. Neoplastic disease, immunotherapy, personalized medicine,
We have
etc.
1 minute left, Dr. Cabello.
Okay, I am proceeding very quickly, and as for the last topic is enhancing the edge of Philippine medicine. So we need to increase the PhDs. We need to make available funds and engage international collaborations. So I shall stop here. And I think the question and answer period is more enlightening. So I will stop us here to be brief. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Dr. Cabellion. So we'll take 10 minutes for Q&A for our first few four discussants, because I think some of our discussants might need to leave a bit earlier. We do have one question coming in for Dr. Mario. This comes from Raymond Tan. What is the best timing during a young person's education for the sort of STEM summer camp that you described? May I request Richmond to kindly highlight or spotlight our discussants?
Yes, thank you, Kay, and thank you, Raymond, for that question. So summer break happens the summer before the freshman year of the new cohort. So it is for 6 weeks in June and July. So even before the students graduate from high school, we start the summer bridge. And the summer bridge has many components. There's like lab rotation. They take classes in calculus and one class in science and society. And so it is a very intensive residential program. But even before then, we have programs also for junior high schools, those we would like to recruit to the program. And then there's the selection weekend after application, and then the summer breach. Thank you.
Thank you, Mario. May I request our other discussants, Dr. Hermogenes, to kindly turn on their video, and Dr. Tan to turn on their video so we can spotlight you. Thank you, Mario, for that response. I'd like to call Dr. Joel Coelho. He has a question for our discussants.
Thank you, Kathleen. Billy, this question is for you. Most of us here are not in the medical field. And so I was wondering if you can give us a quick overview in terms of, just to give us a sense of how much R&D is being performed in the Philippines by the medical schools.
The NIH have been interacting with the research leaders. They have many papers, but I have to be very honest that some of them do not address the national research agenda. There is some genomic research going on. The young PhDs are getting involved with cutting edge research, as there was a new PhD that was working on nudging neuraglia. These are supporting cells for the neurons, and pushing them to be neurons to address stroke. So I cannot give you an exact number, but we are on the way with regards to R&D.
All right. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Another question for Mario. So how do you ensure the sustainability of the Meyerhoff program?
Yes, it's really right now very stable finance-wise because of a lot of attention that it attracted. And so therefore, and I know that foundations are and agencies are themselves, looking for opportunities to support the program. It started with a with $500,000 grant from Mr. Meyerhoff of the Meyerhoff Symphony Orchestra fame, because he would wanted to increase the chances of African American boys in science. And then it ended up, of course, the African American girls protested. We need to be there too. And then it opened up to all races. And now it has the support even of the 30-year worth of alumni who banded together to actually give money to the program. So it's very stable now, and because of the highly committed leadership of the university. And it's also happening at Penn State University. They have like right now probably 7 to 10 million endowment for their own programs, which are really very high compared to when the Meyerhoff started at $500,000. So when you show that your program is effective, successful, money will come.
Okay, thank you for that, Mario. The next question is for Dr. Pagyar. How do you support IP at your university?
Yeah. Apart from our Innovation Technology Support Office, this is actually under IPOPIL, and we are also a member of World Intellectual Property Office. So we are also providing incentives for faculty members who have registered patents or innovations, no, through patents and utility models. And apart from that, we are generous in terms of providing extending incentives for innovation and technologies that are being commercialized. So this is, and also we are our capacity development for faculty members as far as IP management, patent search, and patent drafting is being done continuously by the university through our patent management office.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Dr. Pagyar. Okay, the questions are now coming in. Okay, the next one is from Dr. Cora. May I know if there's any group that's focusing on research to develop and use our natural capital, such as terrestrial and marine biodiversity, in addressing good health and well-being issues? Anyone wants to answer that particular question? Focusing on research to develop the use of our natural capital with regards to terrestrial and marine. Maybe those from the Philippines. Dr. Tan, would you like to take a shot at that question? Based on your knowledge about current research that is ongoing, both in the institution and maybe in other research groups.
Well, I think just in general, I'm not a biologist, but the Philippines is a hotspot of biodiversity. And what that means is you have all of this evolutionary stockpile of genetic information, which is there ripe for exploitation. So I think there are research groups working on natural products. For example, at De La Salle University in the University of the Philippines, and whether these are from terrestrial organisms or marine organisms, the fact is potentially a lot of products could be tapped either by identifying molecules with specific properties and then synthesizing them through a manufacturing process, or just actually tapping the organisms themselves as a means to produce these products. So there is plenty of opportunity for that. I can't speak more because that's a bit outside of my expertise, but my sense as an educated person is it is underutilized given how much biodiversity we have.
Okay, perhaps Giselle can also respond to that particular question.
Should I respond now?
Yes, yes, you may.
Yes, thank you. So Cora, great question. I think you should take a look at the Tuklas Lunas program of the DOST PCHRD. And then maybe you can also look at some of our publications, including mine, on marine biodiversity and marine natural products for drug discovery. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Giselle. Okay, we have several questions for Raymond. So maybe I'll call on Joel Coelho first to ask his question.
Thank you. Raymond, you mentioned about the need to develop tertiary education in the Philippines, and you mentioned the UK Russell Group, which I'm not that familiar with. And then Mario mentioned about the Meyerhoff model, which is, well respected here in the US. And Raymond, can you comment on that? Do you agree with the Meyerhoff model being adapted? I guess the reason why I'm raising this is you mentioned that perhaps there should be some select elite institutions in the Philippines designated for the development of tertiary education. But an alternative to that is any tertiary institution in the Philippines could potentially adopt voluntarily the Meyerhoff adaptation model. So could you comment on that, please?
I'm actually very interested in Mario's model simply because I have a friend in Central Europe who 20 years ago implemented something very similar. This is in a much smaller country than the US, but they got some industry sponsors, and every summer they would take I forget the exact number, maybe the 50 best students from the entire country and put them together, and then they do it for a couple of summers prior to university. And I think they'd give the top X% scholarships to get into the university of their choice. I actually met one of the scholars, and he was, when I met him in 2019, he was midway through his PhD, so he should be done by now.
Right.
But they sustained that through industry sponsorship and through volunteerism of the actual faculty mentors who came from university over the course of 20 years.
Right.
So that can be made to work, and it's good to see that it's being done in multiple countries. I think it could be done in the Philippines. We could probably get, philanthropists. Philanthropy seems to be increasingly fashionable among the extremely rich in the Philippines. This is one angle which can be played, I think, can be capitalized on. PASE certainly can contribute in terms of intellectual capital and mentorship.
Yeah. Thank you, Raymond. Just one quick comment is, I like the Meyerhoff model because of its portability. So in other words, it can be adapted by any institution that wants to adapt it. I'm kind of reluctant to designate certain institutions as elite, because on the one hand, we need to promote science as something that is, an intellectual pursuit. On the other hand, we have to democratize it and open its access to all citizens. Thank you.
Okay, so I think that's all the time we have for the Q&A. So we'll proceed with the other speakers and discussants, but there are a lot of questions in the chat box. So perhaps I can request our discussants to try and answer them, or if you're going to stay until the end of the session, we can address these questions again later. So thank you very much. Now we'll move on to our next cluster or group of discussants. Our next speaker, let me have a look. Okay, our next speaker, of course, is a professor emeritus of the UP Marine Science Institute. Of course, we have Professor Gisela Concepcion, and she was the former president of PASE just last year. So Giselle, kindly present your inputs on this discussion.
Giselle, you're on mute.
Yeah, Giselle, you're still on mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, now we can hear you.
Thank you.
Okay.
I have one slide. Oh my God, just a moment. Let me do that again. And just a moment. It's nice because I am talking about biology as an area where we can definitely apply a lot of S&T and innovation. And I'm hoping that, oh my gosh, I can share with you a model that I have that could be compared with Joel's flight model. But at present, I cannot get my slide going. Let me just try it again. It's okay, I have to stop this and it's kind of rich, so I'll do it again. So this one, and then I'll share again. Oh, do you see it now?
I can only see the top portion of, not sure.
There, do you see it now? Do you see it now? It says shared. Do you see it?
Giselle, no. We're seeing a portion of it, but it's not showing up properly.
Okay, it's showing on my screen. And Well, the title is Seeking Common Ground. Do you see it now?
No, not yet. Maybe Giselle, can you try unsharing and then just sharing again?
Yeah, okay. All right. Once again. So do you see it now?
Yes. Okay. Yes.
All right. So I'll blow it up and
Yep.
it's titled
Yes, there we
Seeking
go.
Common Ground. And as a symbol, I'm just thinking of putting healthy food on the table as a symbol of a good quality of life. And with this food, you would be addressing issues of poverty, hunger, malnutrition, health, because good food would be the best detriment to disease, education, mental health, culture, livelihood, economy, and environment. And here I have some of the technologies that you might apply for agri and aqua productivity, from the traditional ones to the controlled environment ones, the flask, experimental ones. Here we're hand-holding agriculture and agriculture. And here we have the greenhouse with controlled conditions telling you the environment is important. Finally, we have the expertise of Joel, which is vertical farming. And this would really transform, this is revolutionary today, vertical farming in urban centers, requiring a lot of technology aside from biology. So this is, I think, what I've been trying to advocate as PASA president, develop the regional STI ecosystems. And here I'm focusing on fifth industrial revolution, which is on biotechnology and bioindustries. And of course, Joel is a champion of this as well. But this time we wanted to be people-centered, whole of community or society, very inclusive. And Joel's partner, Alvin, is a champion of this. And so are we in Bataan, okay, with BPSU leaders. Then it has to be based on the geography and natural resources. Edna Co presented this to us, and I shared it in the University of Arizona meeting in 2018. Then I think we need the warm bodies that Mario and CP have been championing. Warm bodies working on the ground, STI expert, competent, skilled persons, leaders, and workers. And I would say it's no longer just PhDs or MDs. We need the professionals. We need the masters and the bachelors and the TechVox STEM graduates. We need the critical STI equipment and facilities, and the best persons to design these would be your STI experts. We need success stories, work in progress to serve as models. And we have a few, which I'm pointing out here. Yesterday, we heard what we had done in the UP system and are still doing today. We have DLSU is really a bright star. And now we have Bataan, as shown by our Vice President, Pagyar. And we have Batangas Batsu. This was shown by Batsu President Tirso Ronquillo last night. And then we have Leyte. EVSU President is here. And, we're going to Leyte next week to meet with them regarding S&T Human Capital Development and some other projects. And for Rizal, we have, as Mario explained, we have this social capital program building on STEM, okay, with the Department of Education. So we actually have these success stories. Now, I like to use the word glocal because Joel uses global, but we know very well that we must develop products and services from a region that are first to serve the needs of the local community, and they originate from the local resources, but then they have a global competitiveness. And then we know we need to take care of the environment. So with the new STI, with new technologies, we would be developing a circular economy that's self-sustaining and with a multiplier effect. I'd like to point out Bataan here because they are a leader in putting up the metrics for development, both in terms of Human Development Index and the Environmental Performance Index. And I witnessed this myself during my meetings with BPSU leaders and also in one of our fireside chats with the Bataan governor. Now, the fundamental investments that we have been trying to champion in the S&T Human Capital Development paper are threefold in three levels. One is STEM education from childhood to youth, workforce years and beyond to sustain R&D and innovation. And it was Secretary Pernia who said, that we need this life cycle assessment of our education. And these were championed by the Bernidos in an early episode of our Fireside Chats. Then here we propose the higher education and R&D in regional SUCs led by a critical mass or cluster of PhD level scientists and engineers in priority areas of the region, which would have been identified, okay, with the community. So there would be people's councils, and together we could argue that Mandana's funds would be used for these priorities. And this is what we will talk about in Leyte next week. Then we need the, of course, the facilities, experimental computational modeling and cyber IoT facilities established with advice from the technical experts. Finally, this is also addressed in the S&T Human Capital Development paper, technopreneurial, IP and business development, community-based development. Do you see that? Yes. Okay. This would require training of the community members. You know, in Indonesia, the scientists are not just all PhDs. They're masters, they're tech people. They do cultures, for example. Of
1 minute, Giselle.
Okay, 1 minute. So I'm done because I've already shown you this. Okay, and that's glocal is the most important word here. And then the SWOT analysis, I told Joel that his model of the airplane should consider the forces of flight. And here, this would be compared with the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities, and the thrusts, and the thrust. Sorry, this is I think opportunities, and I think this should be threats. And there should be ways to transform W to S and T to O. Now, are we going to be a catalyst in our activism? Are we going to be visionaries, advocates? Are we going to propose policies? Are we going to be warm bodies on the ground? I'd like to say that PASE, as a volunteer organization of 550 persons with 15 signed MOUs, can propose these actions. And I have major input here from Joey Ochave, who is a very experienced industry person, but also committed to, is also a public servant. Craft a 10-point pro-science advocacy document for national, regional, and local government. Go on a roadshow to build alliances with partner organizations, including STEM professional organizations. Finally, organize a conveners meeting to formalize our pro-science alliance. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Giselle. Thank you. So I think, global. Hill says that the glocal, he likes the term glocal. Okay, so now let's call on our next discussant.
Stop share now.
Okay, our next discussant is the current Vice President of PAASE and a professor at the Institute of Chemistry, University of the Philippines, Los Baños. Let us all listen to Dr. Gladys Completo as she shares with us her inputs on this particular issue.
Thank you, Kay. So let me just share screen. Can you see it?
Yes, we can see it now.
Hold on. It's a little bit slow. Okay, can you guys see it?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so I'd like to share more specific experiences and hurdles that I've encountered while doing research here in the Philippines. So we came back here in 2013, and then I've been here for 9 years now. So a pressing and long-standing issue that the Philippines is still facing is attracting our PhDs to return and to those who are already here to stay for good. So attracting talent is key to encourage a sustainable program like R1 universities, as well as helping create innovations that will in turn create higher value jobs and improve the Philippines' economic prospects. So we still have a problem in the recruitment of PhD faculty members. And even in our department, we only have 12 PhD holders out of the 55 faculty members, and that's very low. So we need to offer maybe competitive PhD salaries and housing. And because of there are very few faculty members, we given full load teaching credits. And so focus is more on teaching. So if you're a very driven researcher, you have to, on top of your full credit load, you have to write proposal and start your own research group. But for me, aside from recruiting, what's more important, I think, is to nurture these new PhD talents. We need to nurture them by mentoring them and give them a strong support group to help them adjust to the Philippine academic culture, which is very different from what they are used to, especially if they came from abroad. And after this, next to this is Seed Research Fund. I would like to commend the UP Systems recruitment and research programs initiatives. So we've been, and I was given one of that recruitment grant, but perhaps a startup equipment grant is necessary, especially if the new PhD recruit will be given an empty lab and has to start from scratch. So although we have outside research funding like DOST, it takes time to come up with, to get the grant. So a big enough startup grant is instrumental for a new faculty member to be successful. And providing an adequate seed research fund can also help seal the deal for the PhD recruit to return. If we have enough research fund, then we can build a new lab or renovate an existing one. So we won't have this problem anymore. Then I would like also to, although this is a very sensitive issue, I think procurement really is a bottleneck in doing research here in the Philippines. Because as mentioned by other speakers before, Philippines has a one-size-fits-all procurement process. So for us researchers, that's less flexible and too stringent. So if your initial research strategy didn't work, you have to come up with an alternative, and then you have to change your LIB and apply for realignment, and you know that there's a lot of signatures needed, so it takes some time. And this can be frustrating if you're doing a typical 2-year government-funded research, where some of the equipment and materials needed in your lab sometimes arrive after the research has already concluded. And we've seen a lot of new buildings in Philippine universities, especially in SUCs. These buildings are fine, but we should also invest in allocating budget for capital equipment, instruments for use in research. It's very difficult to apply cutting-edge knowledge and technologies learned from abroad if we have inadequate research facilities. So they either will not be enticed to return to the Philippines, or if they do, they end up doing alternative research that is not what they want. Okay, so due to the above issues, the researchers' enthusiasm and excitement to do research wear out, and sometimes disillusioned PhD talents may end up wanting to leave. So what can we do? Perhaps PASI can continue lobbying our government, and we look for champions to address these issues. Only then can Philippines truly become competitive in attracting PhDs and other talents needed to address initiatives such as the establishment of R1 universities. So I would like to share this model that the new Singapore has used, and in fact the National University of Singapore has used. Before the year 2000, research was not very developed in Singapore. But look at their ranking now. NUS is number 24 and NTU is number 42. Okay, and what did they do? They recruited top-level people from Caltech, MIT, Imperial College London, and from Germany and Switzerland. And they recruited two types of people. The superstars.
1 minute, Gladys.
Yes, just give me a minute. And the young investigators. So I would like to pose these questions, and maybe we can discuss this more in detail later on during the open forum. So can Philippines hire foreign experts to complement top Filipino principal investigators? If this is an issue, can we still hire but probably limit the number of foreign PIs? Or hire them in an advisory capacity only? So if you look at, these are the critical factors that they used, Singapore used, and they were successful. What they did was they established, so I would like you to focus on number 2 and number 4. Just give me maybe a few more seconds after my 7-minute time. Okay, so recruitment really is essential. And you can see here that they provided infrastructure and environment. So nourishment really is very important. We need to nurture our PhD recruits. And then the point number 4 is we need to develop deep global partnerships. And how did they do this? So by Singapore, they formed the Singapore MIT Alliance, which is an innovative engineering and life science educational and research collaboration by NUS, NTU, and MIT. They also formed medical schools with Duke and Yale, NUS as a liberal arts. So I think this is a very good model, and I would like to discuss this more in detail later on if we can adapt this model. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that, Gladys. Yes, I think we can discuss that later on in the open forum. Now let's call on our next speaker. Richmond, kindly bring up. Okay, so our next speaker is a principal researcher from the Technological Institute of the Philippines. He earned his PhD in physics from the University of the Philippines in Diliman. Let us welcome Dr. Dranreb Earl Juanico.
It is my honor to represent President Dr. Elizabeth Quirino Lajos in this roundtable discussion. Good AM, good PM, wherever now you may be. My name is Dranreb Juanico, Principal Researcher of the Technological Institute of the Philippines, or TIP. I will make a point or two in less than 10 slides and not more than 10 minutes because we at the TIP respect and value your time. TIP is a private HDI focused on engineering sciences that had recently come of age, turning to its senior year last month. The picture on the right is a Technocore building where my office and lab are situated. The direction of flight of the doves in the picture is quite symbolic of our take on the path to R1 status, as the subsequent slides will show. The Carnegie definition of R1 points to 2 dimensions. Within the period of reckoning, the institution is R1 if it had awarded at least 20 doctoral degrees focused on research and spent or had funding of at least $5 million for research and development. It is not clear to us, however, if R1 status is afforded any special treatment by the American higher education system, such as tax incentives. But this simple definition, nevertheless, highlights the necessity of credibility in both academic and economic terms to spur any effort of making scientific research meaningful to society. How do we measure academic credibility in the sense of scientific productivity? Peer review is a trusted process of quality control in scientific work. You've all probably heard of the H index or Hirsch index, the namesake of its author who published the idea in 2005. H is the number of peer-reviewed publications a researcher had written that garnered at least the same number of citations. Is this a fair measure? According to Anne Hartzing, author of a software entitled Publish or Perish, H index tends to increase over time, and so is not a fair measure of productivity due to, number 1, different academic publishing practices across disciplines. Number 2, older researchers, such as full professors, tend to have higher H because they have been publishing longer. And number 3, the value of collaboration is not commensurate with impact. So she devised an alternative index called the HIA, or H index annualized. HIA is calculated by first normalizing the number of citations for each paper by dividing it with the number of authors for that paper, and then calculate the H index of the normalized citation counts. This number is then divided by the academic age, or the number of years elapsed since the researcher's first peer-reviewed publication. With this modification, a ranking applied to a prestigious university in the US showed a more balanced mix of faculty based on career stage in the top 10. With the H index, 9 out of 10 are full professors, whereas with the HIA, the diversity is remarkably higher. A more recent study by Ryan assessed the HIA's effectiveness as a people analytics tool for the useful historical evaluation of faculty turnover decisions, policies, and procedures. In his study, the HIA was found as a better discriminator of research performance to our decisions on who to retain or terminate. The fundamental problem is attracting R&D investment from the private industry. Private industry are attracted to where the money is. Government funding levels can attract interest. Projects with low funding will be seen as cheap imitations at best or futile to society at its worst, as the caricature shows. A study published in 2005, the same year the H index was invented, proposed the competition for funding as an indicator of research competitiveness. According to the Spanish authors, the search for funding is crucial both to the researcher's credibility cycle and in peer review. A simple measure that accounts for the challenges in the journey from a call for proposal to getting funded is the total number of research funding acquired over the last 5 years, or RF5. Combining the two dimensions, funding and science metric credibility in a 2x2 matrix, maps out the human capital objectively. The matrix is shown in logarithmic scale. Each circle represents an individual researcher, and some of those circles actually belong to real people. The crosshairs in red correspond to the thresholds that articulate the research competitiveness policy on any given period. In this example, the threshold for funding is at 10 million pesos, reasonably big enough to attract the interest from the private industry. The threshold for HIA is 0.20, which means that the researcher has consistently published one article for every 5 years that, when corrected for the number of co-authors, has accumulated enough citations to be included in the H index. The crosshairs divide the landscape into 4 categories: performers, overfunded, startups, and underperformers. Performers satisfy the 2 dimensions of academic and economic credibility. Overfunded are likely risky investments. Startups are green shoots that may likely represent new PhDs. And finally, underperformers have high academic credibility, but are struggling to source funding. This map is in no way static, rather dynamic, which makes it a viable policy tool. We can see how things are moving. The next question would be, how can this map be used to guide the path to R1 status? The crosshairs must somehow move, but to which direction? Remember the flight path of the doves in the picture I showed in the first slide? The arrow is the direction the crosshairs must move toward to, number 1, raise the bar for academic credibility, while, number 2, using such credibility as leverage to acquire funding. This makes the map a strategic visualization of the ideal path to R1. The opposite seems to be the case in the previous decades here at home. Instead of moving to the upper right-hand corner of the map, the push is to the opposite side. Policies that have such effect are, number 1, disincentivizing startups because some of them could be seen as overfunded, hence seeking better opportunities abroad. And number 2, creating the illusion of many performers, yet not attracting investment for their research outputs from the private industry. This scenario also reminds us that Philippine HEIs cannot forever justify the production of PhDs as a direct return on investments. We are only draining those new PhDs out of the country. Then, the government must double down, especially on the recipients of PhD scholarships, to lure them back to the country with incentives like the Balik Scientist program. I've heard of anecdotes of Balik scientists returning to realize that there are no research centers equipped with the advanced facilities they were used to having from where they came. To conclude, to get to R1, we have to make it a goal to create real research centers that build industries, not just copy, but establish niches that solve actual problems and therefore will directly impact the Philippine economy. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much for that, Jandrep. So we'll hear more from you later in the open forum. Now we have our final discussant. Richmond, can you kindly bring up the slide for our final discussant? Our final discussant is from Bataan Peninsula State University. He is the director of PPSU's DR3AM Center. He is Professor Dr. John Ryan Tison. Yeah, Ryan, kindly share
Hello,
your slides.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, I'm sorry. I have some problems with my internet, but let me share my slide. Can you see it?
Yes, but it's not yet on slideshow mode.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, yeah. I'll make this very short. Okay. These are my insights, me as a professor from a state university and a member of PAASE. So I already shared my insights maybe last January in our email group. But I would like to reiterate, I think, 5 things here. Number 1 is faculty hiring, promotion, loading, and incentives as mentioned by previous speakers. So as I observed in most SUCs, they hire instructor 1 positions, and which is SG12, and the salary is quite low, and yeah, I think that's a major reason why many masters and PhD graduates do not join SUCs in the regions. Number 2 would be promotion. The NBC 461 is now being revised, and I don't know what will be the guidelines for faculty promotion of public HEIs or the SUCs. So I think we have to look into that. Number 3 is loading. Imagine faculty in SUCs having 36 or more teaching units every week. So there's no more time to do other things, especially research. For incentives, in BPSU we have incentives for publications and IPs, but not all universities have incentives. So I think PAASE may help develop guidelines, standardize or make it more uniform, and meet with CHED, DOST, and DBM probably to establish these standards or guidelines. Number 2, so this has been mentioned by previous speakers also, the education system or training. The issue is research assistantships of students are not being practiced in many universities in the country. So unlike in advanced countries where they have student assistants starting from undergraduate level to master's students as research assistants. In the Philippines, especially in SUCs, we don't have these kinds of programs. Because as mentioned earlier, by other speakers, that these are research assistantships or fellowships serve as training grounds for the students to pursue PhDs. So maybe PAASE and the OST and CHED may enhance programs like the ERDT and other government scholarship programs for STEM, for the STEM discipline. Number three, I think number three would address many issues raised, especially by Dr. Completo. So we need to establish or find these niche products and services, because the R&D focus of the government is a bit broad, and I think we can identify around 10 products or services. And with these 10 products, this doesn't mean that we will only fund or support 10 technologies, because these 10 products would be a lot more technology skills and expertise, and would be needed to develop these products. For example, electric vehicles and others. So if we have these 10 products, or 10 is an arbitrary number, by the way, and this will be the focus of R&D projects, and this will address the matching of graduates from foreign universities. If we have these laboratories established in the regions or in universities, the faculty would know that the university or the institution that will be joining is really working on that particular technology, for example, automotive or renewable energy. So yeah, so I think we need to focus and identify these products. Number four, for the establishment of R1 universities, I think the issue is there are few or very few universities offering graduates education, especially related to STEM, like engineering and other natural sciences. For example, those universities in the ERDT program are much better than other universities offering similar programs. Yeah, for example, in engineering, especially when it comes to publications and other outputs. So yeah, PAASE may identify and support, or the government may support one university per region in developing their graduate programs. And number five, actually, there are a lot of existing programs and policies by CHED, the OST.
You have 1 minute, Ryan.
Yes, and DTI and other government institutions, DA and others. So we have to tap into all these to probably this year or next year jumpstart some activities geared towards our goals, or our what we aspire to do with this R1 vision. So I think that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for that. And now we're down to our open forum, and we already have a lot of points for discussion. So may I request Richmond again to kindly spotlight our discussants, even those who are still here. The first batch of discussants are still here. Maybe there are still some questions. Perhaps we can start with Dr. Joel Coelho. Yeah, Joel.
Thank you, Kathleen, and I thank all of the discussants today. You really brought up really important and crucial issues that need addressing. But Gladys, I'd like to start with you. You really enumerated those crucial points that need to be addressed at Philippine universities. But I'd like to zero in on the time released for research, or the research appointment of professors at Philippine universities. So here in the US, the tenured professors, the typical appointment is about 70% research and 30% teaching. And then those who are 100% teaching, they're classified as professors of practice or lecturers. And again, I want to focus on UP because UP is a national university. It sets the trend. So I'd like to understand, and I'd like to bring in Giselle as well, and President Elizabeth of TIP to share your experience on this. What is keeping UP from adapting an appointment system for professors with teaching and research appointment? Is that because that's mandated by law, that it's all about teaching, or is this within the control of UP itself? Or can you educate us on this, and how can it be transformed?
Oh,
You want me to speak or Gladys?
Okay, Gladys first, since you brought it up, and then Giselle, and then please, President Elizabeth.
so actually, when I started as an instructor, the teaching load was not that, the required teaching load was not that high. I think it started when UP admitted more students. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mom Giselle. And then so when I came back here, I was surprised that we were given really full load. So we have to have 12 units, okay, and then 12 units of teaching load. And then on top of that, you have to do research. So very rarely that you will get deloading. So I think one reason for that really is because we have more students now. I was surprised when so classes start from 7 a.m. and it ends at 7 p.m.
Oh my goodness.
So yeah, so I think that's one factor. That's why we have more teaching load. But you just have to you have to be driven. You really have to love research if you want to. So yes, I think that's the major factor. But yes, and then now because of the promotion requirements, so every administration has these different requirements for you to get promoted. So you have to really get teaching load. There's a minimum requirement. Otherwise, you won't get promoted. I mean, your promotion will be a little bit low, not that great. So yeah, I think that's one of the reasons why.
Okay.
Madam Chair.
Thank you, Gladys.
May I interject? May I interject? Because this is a question that we've been posing to my alma mater with regards to how does faculty address patient care, teaching, and research. I've been trying to get a conversation with my alma mater, but I guess it's very, very busy. But I would like to pose the question to Dr. Tan of the De La Salle.
Oh, I think Dr. Tan has left the room, but okay.
Oh my goodness, we didn't take the opportunity to do it because they are private and we are public. And how do I address it? So maybe at another forum that can be addressed. It is the question of, from a doctor's point of view, number one, you have to take care of patients, then you have to teach, and then where's the time for research? And then the question is that probably a vascular surgeon makes ₱1 million per month in the Philippines. And what does he care about teaching? Or what does he care about research when he can make $1 million outside? Oh, here it is. From Bataan, they say Paase, can put scholarship. Where does Paase get the money? That is the question. But yesterday after the conference, the challenge was how do you implement? And then we had this Sisyphus syndrome. We're going back. Dr. Coelho mentioned about international collaborations. Maybe that's the opportunity to get funding. That is the way to interact and actually fertilize the system. So we need to then engage internationally, whether it is the NIH of the United States, whether it is Japan, whether it is Singapore that is the exchange. But here is the key. They are not going to be interested if we do lousy research, if I may use that adjective. It has to be breakthrough research. We cannot just do any research. They will gather to the Philippines if we Filipinos have the proper idea that they are very interested in. So that is the key. That is the key. Vertical farming, what is it? Dr. Coelho has it, but how do you attract the companies to get it? So I pose.
Okay, thank you, Billy. Could we hear from Giselle, please?
Yeah.
Giselle, please address that question.
Well, Gladys first. Full load in UP is 12 hours face-to-face on a 40-hour week. In De La Salle, Ateneo, and BPSU, a full load is 24 hours of teaching. So you must consider UP teachers blessed. Now, many of us enjoyed protected time for research or deloading. So I'm sorry to hear that in UPLB, this was not being approved. We tried so hard to decrease the number of teaching hours during that time by proposing also larger classes or team teaching, but I don't have time to go into that, but it is a problem that I tried to address. Now, regarding research and collaboration, so we put up so many programs, and EVP Ted knows this. We had opportunities for our faculty to travel, to attend international conferences, to forge collaborations. And then we, of course, promoted this Cooperate program where our graduate students could do part of their research in the labs of the collaborators of our faculty, and they would publish together. So there's so many things that we tried to do, and the programs are all found in the OVA website, and to different extents they were being implemented. So I would say that this is a very, very serious problem in the University of the Philippines until now. But a bottom line is the number of PhDs in the UP has decreased to 30%. In 2017, the slide of TED last night showed 25% of the faculty are PhDs. I'm curious what is the percentage in De La Salle, because the quality of the research, the number of publications is really dependent on the research leader, the project leader who leads the lab. In the research groups in the Philippines, you hardly have a postdoc, okay? And you don't have enough PhD graduates in the group. You don't have enough PhD students, masters, and so. And so it's really a kind of a vicious cycle that has to be broken. So if you don't make the investment in trying to get the STEM education going to the tertiary and postgraduate level, you're not going to solve the problem of high quality publications and work that is peer-reviewed, internationally accepted as a high quality, for it to be commercialized and acceptable to the private sector. It's a complex system, and they're a real value chain. So it's a very complex problem. We need a separate session for this.
Thanks, Giselle.
That's true.
Yes,
Okay, we'll
Kathleen,
have
Kathleen, President
Elizabeth
Elizabeth,
and
please.
Dr. Teddy
Thank you.
afterwards. Yeah.
Yeah.
Dr. Elizabeth, your thoughts on this issue?
Yeah, so thank you.
I saw.
In TIP, we balance teaching and research by the loading faculty. For a private school such as TIP, we really need to source the funding to pay for the faculty's time and his research from external funding. So DOST is one source. We have several projects with the DOST, but the other source really is industry. And yesterday we talked about the problems about industry academic linkages. And to attract industry, we need to be focused on solving problems collaboratively. So we're not really out for publication. We're out for really solving problems and doing practical, collaborative, applied research. So the focus is really the fine-tuning of the problems to be addressed. The traditional logic is that the faculty pounds in his area, his particular area, and tries to make his research relevant. Whereas in collaborative research, it requires that faculty focus on the identified problems. So as I said, we do deloading, and I'm sure that as discussed, most other universities also do deloading, right? But there are different ways to skin a cat. So in TIP, for example, this is sharing with you, we started hiring full-time researchers. Okay. Taking the cat out of the bag. Anyway, sharing time. And this is supposed to be, as I said yesterday, celebrating research. And, sharing is something that's to be done. And I'm learning also from all of you. For example, we have a principal researcher, and under him are research engineers. Dr. Juanico is a principal researcher. And no other Philippine HEI, from our knowledge, not even UP, has that kind of item. So there are research engineers working under him, and these research engineers, some of them are also hires of TIP, and he also involves faculty members, our very own faculty, our very own PhD students, even our college students, because Rev is also a champion for problem-based learning. And so we put together all the dots and we have a policy. We have a policy to support research. We do the loading depending on the nature of the research involvement. We also have an existing policy that enables our teachers not to have loads for an entire semester, like two of our professors who are working on the emergency ventilator that I discussed yesterday, depending on the nature and urgency of the research endeavor. So that is our technical policy. As Reb said, the building behind me and him in his presentation earlier, it's a center where it is dedicated to collaborative applied research.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
I would like to take this opportunity, being a partner of PAASE, TIP, and Dranreb being an associate member of your organization. I'd like to take this opportunity to invite the PhDs here to also teach with us in TIP. You know, we have to be able to inspire the young ones, and just seeing you, even just for one semester. Just Santos did that, Dr. Jus Santos. He taught in our logistics master's program, and then Dr. Edsel Peña gave us a 1-hour lecture on the role of students in data science. This was attended by 1,000 students, faculty, officers, and employees of TIP. Dr. Gladys Completo and all the other PhDs here do join us in TIP, even just for one semester, 1 hour, one consultancy. Dr. Gladys Completo mentioned about consultancy model. There are so many models to explore. And if we all help each other, I think we don't only create many R1 universities, but we really create a critical mass for research in the whole Philippines. Something we have been talking about, as you all said, since yesterday for 50 years. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much for that, President Elizabeth. Can I have Dr. Teddy, and then we'll have Dr. Arnel Salvador.
Yeah, thank you for that question, Joel, because that's a very interesting question and a very complex one if you're just going to look at the UP system. When I describe, although there's a standard on how to get the tenure track and the promotion, there are variations in each of the autonomous systems. For example, in the University of the Philippines, Manila, we have what's called a research faculty. So your choice is to produce research, and you'll probably be in one of the institutes in the National Institutes of Health. But you also have a certain percentage of your hours being given to teaching, but the bigger bulk is going to be research work and a lot of publications and a lot of getting grants, research grants. The other end is the clinical side, that the one that Billy was asking about. Is there's people who prefer to be clinical and don't really want to do research, but they're also required because the university wants a faculty that's balanced. They can teach, they can do research, and they can do all the extension service. The other unique thing is in Diliman and the other in LB, I think they have professional staff. These are PhDs that end up as researchers. They don't want to teach, but they're hired as university. They're working in a lab. They help a professor do research. They become professional staff. So we have some of those as well, and we do that as well in the NIH. So basically, it's a juggling act, Joel. The answer to your question, it's a very complex juggling act. I know LaSalle has very strict. No, he left already, but LaSalle is very strict. They're paid well, but they're strict with about the output and the publications, and then you're out if you're not able to deliver. So wherever you go, there's a certain flavor of how each academic institution provides an incentive or disincentive to the tenure position. So you've got to learn it. And now we're learning, we have to educate the young faculty on this career path, because you see them complaining as they go up the ranks, and there is no orientation on how. So we've started to learn this in the College of Medicine, that we need to educate the young faculty on how to go up the tenure track. What are the ways that, how do you divide your time? How do you plan your career? There's also such a thing that needs to happen, because a lot of the faculty, young faculty, from instructor position to assistant professor, are all confused of the system as what was described. It keeps changing, and the Board of Regents keeps approving. So a little bit of more standardization, probably. Even I think among the SUCs, they're also trying to standardize. But again, I think there's really a lot of diversity that so that's the Philippines for you. The Philippines is all about diversity. Everybody has their own way of doing stuff. So I think that answered the question.
All right. So before I go on to Arnel, since DLSU has been mentioned several times, although Raymond has left the room, perhaps I can chip in a few of my a few things about DLSU. So with regards to requirements in terms of publications, we are strict, especially if you're just on probationary mode. But when you're already a full-time faculty, it's not that strict anymore. So as long as you meet the requirements needed for permanency, then you more or less become permanent. With regards to research, that is true. We do not have full researchers at the moment, but we do have also a research faculty track, which was launched just recently in 2015. And I think that has helped a lot of our faculty who are really more focused on research. I echo some of your concerns here, especially what Gladys mentioned a while ago, when you have a new PhD graduate and then suddenly they get employed in an institution, and then they're just bombarded with teaching load, and then they lose their their drive, their passion, and their momentum in actually doing research. So I think that's one thing that we need to do, is to try and shelter those new PhD graduates so that they don't lose that momentum. Kasi parang yun nga we have that reverse culture in the Philippines. They end up doing all the dirty work. Okay, sige. So now I'll call on Arnel, please.
Good evening. Hearing the comments, my take for how do we solve the problem of teaching overload? How do you do that for the private schools? Offhand, I really think it's indirect cost would help that. If you increase the indirect cost of research grants to 50%, then your university will love you, because you're bringing in money now. And then they could argue, well, I bring in money, and then you need people to teach this course, get it from my indirect cost. But this has not been practiced. It's surprising to me. Like 20 years, I know in the US it's 50%. The PICARI grant gave 20%, and that did a lot of favors. Like the department heads were trying to, oh, what do you need? Oh, I'm not going to teach this, so get somebody to teach that instead, because it's taking up so much of my time. So indirect cost, but we have to fight that for the funding agencies, USD, CHED, and others. Maybe at this point they do not like that, but that is the cost of doing research, of incentivizing, and the rest would follow. Teaching assistantships, you have that in your research grants. I started with that. The others, like Gladys, though, I really feel the pain, because when I see the young professors coming back and there's no lab, my situation was different, because when I came home, people before me had the foresight of what it will take to make me come home. So they put up this nice laboratory, which cost them something like $2 million. So then I had no problem. My problem was to run that. It may be time to consider that again when we try to bring our faculty to make them stay here. Give them the laboratory. It will cost money, but these are all very young and enthusiastic researchers. Now is the time to not to lose them. My next comment is for TIP. You have one very good professor there. Make them happy at TIP. Keep him very, very happy.
Salamat, sir.
That's my take. I guess there's another forum for how to solve all of this problems, but yeah, that's for another talk. But indirect cost, I think that is the silver bullet that would make R1 possible. 50%.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Arnel. I'd just like to maybe focus on 2 points that have been raised here in the chat box because we have only a few minutes left. The first one is what Gladys really raised in her talk a while ago about having foreign expats as part of the ecosystem, maybe not just of SUCs or HEIs. I'd like to hear the thoughts of our speakers regarding that. Maybe Janjeb. Sige, Janjeb, you first.
Thank you. Yeah, actually, that's one possible solution, and I guess since we are in the in the scientific realm, we should welcome many different solutions to a single problem. But in our case in TIP, I think we really believe that it's about looking for realistic problems to solve, and especially problems that are homegrown. It's about identifying these problems and then using all the training that we had when we were PhD students and then solve that problem. Like for instance, we are doing a project now on batteries, and we've been looking at batteries as these are commonplace objects that you can find in cars. But then there are problems, there are fundamental problems to really solve. And I myself was not an expert in this area, but I think with the training I had, let's say with Professor Salvador before in NIP, using the physics that I know, that I understood, we can come up with solutions. So I guess we can do it locally. I think I really believe that we have a lot of talent here. It's just that they're latent talent. They are not used for full-time research because again they are bogged down by having to teach a lot of load. But if you are going, if we just try, I'm advocating this this technique of using problem-based learning, a problem-based approach, meaning to say it's not like your usual teaching the stuff like you get from textbooks, but find a problem and then the mentor, him or herself, is also learning by solving that problem with the students. That's what I've been doing with the research engineers that I'm also leading. So yeah, I guess it's worthwhile to look into that possibility. I think it's possible to replicate anywhere in the Philippines. Maybe if you can identify a few people on board and then just try problem-based approaches. I think it will do a lot for us to establish good niche, and that's what we should be doing actually.
Okay, thank you for that, Ranjab. Yes, Giselle.
No, I just wanted to say that NIP has really been a model institute in UP for the hard sciences, and it took a lot of infrastructure and superstructure building there, with Cesar Saloma being like a very ideal mentor for all the young faculty and students, and he does it to this day. So I'd like to congratulate NIP, Arnel, and Dranreb, who I'm very proud of. He was my student.
Thank you.
Very good.
Professor Saloma was my advisor.
Yes, absolutely. So I wanted to say about the FDI, it's allowed foreign direct investments, includes foreign experts. And we have to thank former Secretary Ernie Pernia for this. Okay, now in UP, what happened? Last night, we talked about the philosophical divide, what you would say is a case of ultranationalism versus internationalism. So we championed internationalization and internationalism in the previous administration. And we had a visiting professor program. And you could be a professor in your chosen institute with a buddy, with a host, and you could teach from 3 months to 6 months, and even shorter than that if you could do your online or virtual teaching and mentoring. Okay, but I will take the particular example of the archaeological studies program, where there were foreigners who were faculty there for many, many years. And they actually received a startup grant as a new PhD faculty. But then little by little, they were encouraged to lead the archaeological studies program. And one of them is a longtime faculty of UP, is now at the Ateneo. Okay, and there was a brilliant one, is back in Paris. So these things are, these are the, the philosophical, underpinnings of why we do not have foreign faculty, say in the University of the Philippines, but nothing's to stop you at TIP de La Salle, I think it is a very, very good idea. Thank you.
So maybe I'll have Ryan's thoughts on this.
Yeah, hello.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree with all the discussions given. Yeah, we need to more experts to come and uh, more facilities for our young PhDs as well. And yeah, if UP has many problems, I believe that SUCs have much more problems with regards to funding, experts. In our university, in our college, I think with 40 or 50 faculty members in our College of Engineering, I think we only have 2 or 3 PhDs in BPSU and several master's graduates. So that's the reality in SUCs. So yeah, so if we can have R1, R2, R3 to help develop these younger and yeah universities, so I think that would be good, and we can probably categorize because I think there's not there's no one size fits all solution for the establishment of R1 university. So yeah, we need to really look at the big picture and solve all the smaller details of each institution. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So that's all the time. Maybe can I just have Gladys to wrap up this particular discussion before we end tonight's session? Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, thank you. Thank you, Kay. So the reason why I presented, Singapore's model is because they were really very successful. Their ranking was so low, and then suddenly after just a few years, it went up to 24, rank number 24 and 42. So I think there's still a need for aggressive recruitment, right, of PhD talents. And yes, I agree also with John Rep that yes, we can also solve it locally. I don't question that Filipinos are very smart, are intelligent, and very resourceful, but we do need help from established researchers, from top level people from different universities, because they already did it, and we can learn from them, and we can improve much better and faster. So that's the reason why I pose this question: if we can hire more Filipino principal investigators, not Filipino, non-Filipino, but apparently we can. So I thought we cannot, so we can, but I think it should be long term, right? It should be long term, not just for 6 months or 1 year. If we want to be mentored, and they need to really do the I'll use Alvin's term, do the groundwork, right? So we have to do that, and the strategy also is, that's the strategy: 2 types of people: superstars, the well-established one, and also young researchers. They are the ones that are really hungry, very excited. I remember those days that I was so excited. Oh my gosh, I was so driven to do everything, and I wanted change, and I wanted to help and improve the department. So yes, that's why I posed that question, and we can come up with an advisory capacity also. Maybe we can come up with that. So that's
Thank
it.
you. Thank you so much for that, Gladys. So I think there's really so much more discussion. That's why we have a few more days for this week-long Pro Science. Before we end, I'd like to acknowledge our scribe, of course, Dr. Lulu Herold, and we will have a summary from our rapporteurs. I'd like to call on Isa Yu and Marge Peña to give us the summary of tonight's session.
Hi, thanks, Kay. Wow, that was a very jam-packed discussion. Marge, are you here or?
Yes, I'm here. I think we did the PowerPoint, and then I don't know if you're going to use it, but I will leave the floor to you.
Okay, I
Yes.
think I just want to summarize the discussions.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Go ahead.
All right.
Because we
So
don't have much time for two.
yeah, the Philippine SUCs and HEIs have established R&D centers with support offices, innovation, tech transfer, and business offices to spur R&D in the Philippines. These investments have done that, but it's still not enough. Philippines, as we have been shown, is still underperforming R&D expenditure, PCT patents, and publications, as compared to our Southeast Asian counterparts. And our discussions have posed, we've all heard about the main challenges in the Philippines, which include lack of infrastructure, lack of human STI capital, lack of facilities and equipment access, and delays in processes. We've heard about the procurement problem that's giving us white hairs all the time. But our discussions have also put forth recommendations on how to address these challenges. So they've focused mainly on two things. I've sort of sorted them in terms of infrastructure and human capital. So for infrastructure, we heard about the scientific gaps that need to be addressed and the push to create research institutes such as the Philippine Virology Institute and the PGH in Diliman that will address, cutting edge research. So there's that investment. But we also heard about the creation, the possibility of creating university managed, government funded national research institutes, similar to the US National Lab experience. But of course, creating all these research institutes necessitates investments in facilities and equipment access. Another way by which we can spur innovation and research is to establish S&T parks or in regions, or what we call the regional STI ecosystems. For these regional STI ecosystems, we have to consider the geographic location, the natural resources, to create niche research centers. And I just want to interject that I think DOSC has already started that. In fact, PTRI has already established these niche centers, also with the other DOST initiatives. So we've started, we're getting there. But this STI ecosystems, this regional STI ecosystems have to have experts, the warm bodies, the leaders and the workers, as well as the equipment and facilities. The sustainability of these STI ecosystems was also addressed, and this would depend heavily on SUC community engagement in terms of production of local, so we like to use that word now, local products and services. And that should sort of address the sustainability as well. So we don't always depend on government funding. Then there was discussion as well in terms of human capital. To address the programs in increasing scientists, or discussants looked at the pipelines and provided solutions in increasing STEM. So there has to be fundamental investments in STEM as early as youth and childhood, grade school, K-12 education. We also heard about ideas in organizing and implementing talent development programs in STI, and how we can adapt the UMBC Meyerhoff program. This program can attract high school students and nurture them early with summer bridge programs and prepare them for postgraduate STEM programs. With our current pool of scientists and researchers in the academia, definitely what was addressed was the need to look into the faculty recruitment, retention, and promotion schemes in HEIs, but more so in SUCs. So mas mahirap sa SUCs. And again, this also goes back into investments in facilities and equipment to retain our PhDs, not to lose them to foreigners or foreign institutions. And we also heard about the creation of a research-oriented career track. And these are full-time scientists and research institutes. And then lastly, what was interesting was also the idea of forming local partnerships between SUCs, sharing our faculty for consultation and teaching and research, as well as global partnerships with foreign universities and institutes, much like what Gladys said with the NUS model. And this would address the sustainability of mentoring and nurturing and keeping the spark alive in our scientists. And last but not the least, PAASA's role in all of this was also mentioned. What is our role and how do we engage in catalyzing these changes to spur research and innovation in the Philippines? So hopefully that encapsulates the discussion for tonight. Thank you so much for all the lessons and the people in the webinar.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that wrap up, Isa. And I know that there are so many questions that remained unanswered, but this is an ongoing discussion, and I'm sure PAASA will be creating committees to really look into these things in more detail. So thank you again for joining us today, and I invite you all to listen again tomorrow to continue our discussion. Good day, everyone.
Bye for now.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kay.
Good night.